If this story sounds calm at the beginning, it's because I didn't understand what was happening yet. I thought it was just exhaustion, that dangerous kind, when your eyes close for a second too long and the road keeps going without you. I was driving through the Appalachian highway late at night, fighting sleep, gripping the steering wheel like it could keep me awake. The forest on both sides was thick and endless, swallowing the road, the sound, the sense of direction. No cars, no lights, just asphalt, trees, and the quiet pressure of fatigue. And then I saw the neon sign ahead. It flickered through the darkness, like a mirage. A motel. Old neon letters glowing unevenly, buzzing faintly in the night air. It stood alone right by the road. No nearby buildings, no town lights, just the motel and the Appalachian forest, pressing in behind it like a wall. It didn't feel welcoming, but it felt necessary. I didn't hesitate. I slowed down, turned off the road, and parked in front. The place was quiet in a way that felt wrong for a motel. No voices, no engines cooling, no doors opening or closing. When I stepped inside, the lobby lights were on, but the space felt abandoned. A front desk stood in the center with a small brass bell on it. I rang it. The sound echoed and disappeared. I waited. Nothing. I rang it again, louder this time. Still nothing. "Hello?" I called out, already feeling stupid for asking. The silence answered me immediately. I stood there longer than I should have. The exhaustion was crushing me, pressing down on my shoulders, making every thought slow and heavy. That's when I noticed the key rack behind the desk. Several keys hung there, neatly arranged, each with a room number attached. Some slots were empty, some weren't. No clerk, no sign, no instructions, just keys. I remember thinking how strange it was, and how little I cared. I needed sleep more than I needed answers. I told myself I'd explain everything in the morning, pay properly, apologize if I had to. Right then, all I wanted was a bed. So I reached over the counter and took a key. Room 117. The hallway was dim and narrow, the carpet worn thin from years of footsteps. My own steps sounded too loud as I walked. Each door looked the same. When I finally reached 117, I paused, hand on the key, listening. Nothing moved. Nothing breathed. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room was exactly what you'd expect from a roadside motel. A bed, a small table, a lamp, curtains pulled tight over the window. No personality, no comfort. Just a place to stop existing for a few hours. I didn't unpack. I didn't turn on the TV. I dropped onto the bed fully dressed and closed my eyes. The last thing I remember before sleep took me was thinking that I'd never felt this tired in my life. Sleep didn't come gently. It didn't drift in or slowly take over. It hit me like a switch being flipped, sudden, heavy, final. One moment I was lying on the bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to slow my breathing. The next, my thoughts simply dropped away. There was no comfort in it, no release. Almost immediately, something felt wrong. I was asleep, but my body refused to surrender to it, as if it sensed the night wasn't meant for rest. The first dream wrapped around me without images at first, just pressure, a tightness in the chest, a feeling of being enclosed somewhere too narrow to turn around. Shapes came later, hallways that stretched longer the more I moved, doors that looked familiar but never quite right. I had the constant sense that I was supposed to remember something important, something urgent, and that forgetting it was dangerous. That's when I woke up. My eyes snapped open, heart hammering, breath caught halfway in. For a few seconds, I didn't move at all. I listened. The room was exactly the same, dark, silent, unchanged. The lamp stood where it should. The curtains were still. Nothing watched me from the corners. I told myself it was just a dream, bleeding into reality. Old motel? Thin walls? Pipes? That explanation almost calmed me. Almost. Because a moment later, I heard it again. It was a sound without a clear source, not loud, not sharp, just there. A dull noise somewhere beyond the walls, too distant to pinpoint and too deliberate to ignore. I sat up slightly, straining to listen, trying to turn it into something familiar. It faded before I could. Sleep dragged me back under before I could decide whether I wanted it to or not. The next dream was worse. Not because it was more intense, but because it was emptier. Endless walking, endless waiting. Doors opening into spaces that felt unfinished, like rooms abandoned halfway through being built. The panic didn't spike. It crept. Slow and patient. By the time I realized how anxious I was, it had already filled me completely. I woke again, soaked in sweat, breath shallow, convinced I'd been asleep only a few minutes. When I checked the clock, the numbers told a different story. The sounds kept returning throughout the night. Sometimes a muted thump, as if something heavy had been set down far away. Sometimes what could have been footsteps, slowed and distorted by distance. Once, I was certain there was something just outside my door, not knocking, not moving away, just occupying that space. I sat up fully then, staring at the door, waiting for the handle to turn. It never did. After that, I stopped checking the time. Each awakening felt heavier than the last, like the night itself was pressing down on me, refusing to let go. At one point, I tried to stay awake on purpose. I lay there with my eyes open, listening to the building around me, the faint hum of electricity, the deep silence between sounds. That silence was worse than anything else. It left too much room for my thoughts to move in directions I didn't want to follow. Eventually, exhaustion pulled me under again. It always did. And every time I fell asleep, the dreams were already waiting. When the light outside the window finally began to shift, it didn't feel like morning. It felt like survival. My body ached as if I'd spent the night braced for impact. My head was heavy and dull, packed with fog. When I sat up, the room spun slightly. Whatever that night had been, it hadn't rested me. It had taken something instead. By the time I stood up from the bed, I already felt worse than I had before I'd laid down, and I knew, without question, that I needed to leave as soon as possible. The lobby lights were still on. The front desk stood exactly where it had been the night before. Empty. I rang the bell once. The sound echoed, sharp and lonely. I waited. Nothing. I rang it again, louder, irritation creeping in now. Hello? My voice felt out of place there. No footsteps answered. No door opened behind the desk. The motel felt frozen, like it existed only when I wasn't looking directly at it. I didn't want trouble. I didn't want explanations. I just wanted to leave, cleanly. I pulled a $100 bill from my wallet and laid it flat on the counter, weighting it with the edge of the key so it wouldn't slide. It felt like more than enough for one night. I hesitated for a second, half expecting someone to appear and stop me. No one did. So I turned around and walked out. Daylight made the forest look different. Still dense, still endless, but less threatening. I drove into a nearby town, took care of the things I needed to do, and tried not to think about the motel. Every now and then, though, my thoughts drifted back to it. The empty desk, the bell, the way the night had felt stretched and wrong. I told myself it was just a bad stop on a long drive. Nothing more. On the way back, I paid attention to the road. I knew exactly where the motel was. I remembered the curve, the stretch of straight asphalt before it, the way the neon had cut through the dark. As the distance counted down in my head, I slowed without realizing it, eyes searching the roadside. Nothing appeared. I passed the spot where it should have been and felt my stomach drop. I slowed almost to a stop and looked around. There was no parking area, no gravel, no building. Just a solid wall of forest, trees packed so tightly together it looked untouched, like nothing had ever stood there at all. I checked my mirrors, turned around, drove the stretch again. Still nothing. I pulled over and opened my navigation app, hands suddenly unsteady. The map showed my location clearly. The marker sat exactly where I remembered the motel being. Same mile, same curve in the road. According to the screen, I was right on top of it. But in front of me, there was only forest. I sat there longer than I should have, engine idling, trying to make sense of it. I replayed the night over and over. The neon sign, the lobby, the key, the bed. I knew I hadn't dreamed it. I had slept somewhere. I had walked those halls. Yet the place itself was gone. Eventually, with no answers and nowhere to look, I pulled back onto the road and kept driving. The forest closed in behind me, as if nothing had ever happened there at all. And no matter how far I went, one question stayed with me, cold and unanswered. If the motel was never there, then where did I spend the night? If this story unsettled you, leave a like and let the shadows know. Subscribe for more tales you shouldn't hear after dark. And if you've seen something you can't explain, tell us in the comments. We're always listening.